I now call the Shadow Leader, Chris Philp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I ask the Leader to provide us with the forthcoming business?
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The business for the week commencing the 4th of November includes Monday the 4th of November, continuation of the budget debate, Tuesday the 5th of November, continuation of the budget debate, Wednesday the 6th of November, conclusion of the budget debate. The House will rise for the November recess at the conclusion of business on Wednesday the 6th of November and return on Monday the 11th of November. The provisional business for the week commencing the 11th of November will include Monday the 11th of November, general debate on flood preparedness. Tuesday the 12th of November, remaining stages of the House of Lords Hereditary Peers Bill. Wednesday the 13th of November, debate on a motion to approve the draft voter identification amendment of list of specified documents regulation 2024, followed by debate on a motion to approve the draft environmental protection single-use vapes England regulations 2024, followed by debate on motions to approve the draft export and investment guarantees limit on exports and insurance commitments Order 2024, the draft export and investment guarantees limit on exports and insurance commitments number 2, Order 2024, and the draft export and investment guarantees limit on exports and insurance commitments number 3, Order 2024. Thursday, the 14th of November, second reading of the Lords Spiritual Women's Act 2015 Extension Bill, Lords. Friday, the 15th of November, the House will not be sitting.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I echo your thanks and congratulations to Robin James retiring today after 40 years service. We all, of course, in this House rely on the service of the clerks, and I know we are all extremely grateful to Robin for the work he's done over 4 decades. I'm sure the whole House will also want to send our thoughts, prayers and best wishes to those affected by the terrible floods currently happening in Spain, and some British citizens are affected as well. Mr Speaker, it's good that we will have such ample time for debate on the budget because it raises some extremely serious issues. On the 29th of July, the Chancellor of the Exchequer stood at that dispatch box and told us there was a £22 billion black hole. That has been repeated by Labour ministers subsequently as a pretext for the tax rises they planned all along. Now, the Chancellor commissioned the OBR, or asked the OBR to produce a report into this that was published yesterday. It's called The Review of the March 2024 Forecast for Departmental Expenditure Limits, a snappy title. Now, I've read that report, as I'm sure others have, and nowhere in that report, nowhere, does it mention £22 billion. It's not there at all. In fact, the only reference they have to a number is to be found on page 2 and in table 1, and even the Treasury, straining every sinew, could only find numbers that added up to 9.5, and even there, the OBR says, and I quote, "It is not possible to judge how much of that might actually have been realised." So when the Chancellor said there is a £22 billion black hole, the OBR report yesterday now proves that was simply untrue. So will she come here and apologise for providing that number to the House when the OBR report now shows it simply wasn't true? And certainly doesn't justify £40 billion worth of tax rises, the largest tax rises in any budget in history. Now let me turn to election promises and trust in politics, because when we make promises to the public, it's important we keep them. Now the party opposite, I don't know why you're laughing, it's your promises. The party opposite said their plans did not require any extra tax rises. Yesterday they announced £40 billion of extra tax rises. They said there would be no increase in national insurance. Yesterday they announced a £25 billion increase in national insurance. And let me turn now to their final fig leaf, working people. Apparently, working people wouldn't be affected. Now, in the last couple of hours, the Chancellor herself on the BBC has admitted what we all knew all along. She admitted that working people would be affected as a result of lower wages. But in fact, we can actually quantify that thanks to the OBR's analysis. I'm now quite a fan of the OBR, Mr Speaker. They published yesterday their economic and fiscal outlook. Now, it's 205 pages long, so maybe some of the members opposite haven't had a chance to read all of it, but I have. And on page 54, in paragraph 3.11, it tells us exactly how much of that £25 billion national insurance increase will fall on the shoulders of working people. They say, and I quote, 76% of the total will result in lower real wages for working people. 76% of that £25 billion increase will fall on the shoulders of working people. That is £19 billion a year, lower wages as a result of yesterday's budget. That's not me, that's the OBR. So perhaps the leader, would like to apologise to those working people for the £19 billion pay cut she's just handed them. Now, during the election, members on this side warned that Labour's plans would result in a £2,094 per working household tax increase, and they called us liars. I remember being on the radio and the TV, and Labour shadow ministers at the time, including the leader, I think, called us liars. Well, we now know the truth. £40 billion a year, that is £2,173 per working household, about £100 more than we warned. So perhaps you can apologise for that as well. We also warned that the tax burden would increase to 37.4% of GDP. The OBR say it's going to be 38% of GDP, higher even than we warned when they called us liars. That is the highest tax burden ever in our country's history. So they were elected, Mr. Speaker, on a false prospectus. The OBR have now told us that will result in lower growth by the end of the forecast period and higher inflation. The truth has finally come out. They're going to tax more, they're going to borrow more, and they're going to spend more. And now we know who's going to pay. Working people are going to pay to the tune of £19 billion a year.
Can I just say to the Shadow Leader, you said you, and I am definitely not responsible for this budget. I want to make that very clear. Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I also join you in paying tribute to Robin James, who's been a clerk here for over 40 years, most recently on the Committee on Standards and of Privileges, which certainly put him in the spotlight in recent years. And I know he wishes to retire to Wales with the twin ambitions of learning Welsh and finally learning to drive. And I'm sure we wish him well with both of those endeavours. And can I also congratulate the honourable member for High Peak on the birth of his newborn daughter, Connie, this week. So, Mr. Speaker, finally, I think, the Conservative leadership contest will be finishing this weekend. And it could be all change on the benches opposite. And this could be my last exchange with the honourable gentleman. I mean, he's well known for his ambition, and perhaps today was another audition for perhaps higher office, because I'm sure he'd welcome a promotion from the detailed discussions we have on R&R and House procedure, and I'm sure we'll be looking forward to that. And can I thank him, though, for the work that we have done together. And if this is our last exchange, I will really miss, how can I put, his boundless enthusiasm, because God loves a trier. So let's hope that the next Conservative leader does too. But as he rightly says, Mr. Speaker, yesterday we saw history made with the first ever budget delivered by a female Chancellor. I'm so proud of my friend for smashing that glass ceiling. The country voted for change, and our budget lives up to that promise. We've made clear choices. We've chosen responsibility over recklessness, reliable public services over endless crises, putting working people first, investment over decline, a budget that was now backed by the International Monetary Fund, an unprecedented endorsement of a budget. And in many ways, this is not a budget we expected nor wanted to make, but we've had to fix the mess left by the party opposite. And I know they don't like to hear it, but they weren't straight with people before the election. And the Office for Budget Responsibility, which he's quoting, has made clear that had they known the true state of the public finances in March, their forecasts of the previous government plans would have been, and I quote, materially different. And I don't normally agree with the former Chancellor quasi-quartang, but perhaps the honourable gentleman should heed his advice today. And I quote, "The situation Labour inherited was structurally difficult. In other words, we're clearing up their mess." And I am a little confused, Mr Speaker, because is he now accepting that there was a black hole, but he doesn't accept the amount of the black hole? Or is he still in denial that there was even a black hole at all? Because it is ironic that they spent all week undermining the OBR and only today now trying to hide behind the OBR's figures. So I'm not sure which is it. He will know that there was a huge black hole, and that was before the pay awards that were sitting on their desk that they knew someone was going to have to pay for, and they set aside no money to do so. And I'm afraid, Mr Speaker, we make no apology that this budget is about long-term investment after a decade of national renewal. And that's why it's right we consider the benefits of investment and not just their costs, because this country has suffered years of decline and underinvestment, and we were ranked the second lowest for investment of all our OECD counterparts, and we've chosen investment and not further decline under the Tories. And we've had to be honest about some of the difficult choices that we've made in this budget, given what we were left with. And I do have to ask the honourable gentleman and the party opposite, how would they fix the finances left by this country? How would they give the NHS the money it needs? How would they get the long-term investment this country is so crying out for? And we have put working people first, Mr Speaker, we absolutely have. And I am proud of the pay rise that this budget gives to the poorest workers next April. And there's many more things to welcome in this budget, Mr Speaker, and I'm sure that he and the whole House would want to welcome them. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, I don't know. One of the biggest ever increases in NHS spending to deal with the record waiting list that they left behind. Much needed funding for SEND education and a boost for carers for the first time since the 1970s. Fixing the schools they left to crumble. More affordable social housing. Money to tackle the cladding crisis. Ushering in a decade of national renewal, investing in the jobs of the future, in clean energy, tech, aerospace, automotive, transport, life sciences and much, much more. And in particular, Mr Speaker, I've got to say this because it really does need underlining. This government has finally put aside money to pay the compensation to the victims of historic injustices, infected blood, the Post Office Horizon scandal and delivering fairness to the mine workers' pension scheme. And it is honestly the most shameful part of the recklessness that they left the country in, that they many, many times promised the victims of these injustices that they would receive compensation, yet they put aside not a single penny, not a single budget line in any of their costings to pay for it. We cannot, in one budget, undo the 14 sorry years of Conservative underinvestment, stagnant growth, falling living standards and crumbling public services. But this budget makes a very, very good first step forward.
John Trickett.
Mr Speaker, and yesterday we saw large numbers of women lobbying Parliament. They represent a generation of women, and it's odd that it was women rather than men and women, isn't it? Perhaps not too odd, given the values of the Conservative Party, who suffered a great injustice in the 2011 Act. They called themselves the WASPy women. Now, government takes time. It inevitably does, and estimates have to be made and legal advice taken too. But can the leader indicate to us when we're going to receive a statement or a debate on the WASPy situation so that we can give some hope to the thousands of women, 4,500 in my own constituency? I'd be grateful if she can indicate where we are.
Well, I know the honourable gentleman has long campaigned on these issues and has asked about them, and he rightly raises the points of the campaigners. He will be aware that the report is a very detailed and substantial report and does require the government to give proper time to consider all of its findings, and I can assure him that as soon as that proper consideration has been given, ministers will come to Parliament to report on it.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to express my sympathies to the people of eastern Spain for the tragic scenes that we're seeing there. I understand that a 71-year-old Briton may also be amongst the dead, and we expect the numbers to go up. It is perhaps timely that there is a general debate on flooding coming up, and I welcome that debate and look forward to seeing what is discussed there. Mr. Speaker, there is much that the Liberal Democrats do indeed welcome in the budget that we saw yesterday, and in particular we welcome the additional funds for the day-to-day spending for the NHS. We have long been campaigning for that and we very much welcome it. However, there are patients in hospital who are well enough to leave hospital, but they cannot do so unless they get the care that they need. And the £600 million of funding that was announced for social care won't unfortunately touch the size of what is actually needed to make that system work properly and to alleviate those pressures on the NHS. Will the Leader of the House set aside time in government time for a general debate on how best to reform social care?
Yeah. Well, can I thank her for that, and can I also join her, I meant to do so earlier, and the shadow leader in expressing the government's condolences and support to those in Spain who have either died or lost all of their belongings and all of their homes in the Spanish floods recently. And as she says, we do have a general debate next week on flood preparedness, partly in response to so many questions in this session coming forward on that topic. And I thank her for her words about the budget, because I think there is a lot of good news in that budget which her party should welcome, given how much campaigning they have done on many of these issues, and they should take some gratitude for some of those measures, particularly the biggest ever cash increase in the earning thresholds for the carers allowance, something I know her party has campaigned on. And as she says, we have announced a huge funding boost for the NHS and an extra £600 million support for social care. She's absolutely right to say, though, that these issues will take time to both work through and need further reform and further investment to deal with going forward, because the ageing population and the crisis in social care is inextricably linked to the future of our health service.
Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in my constituency I have many tower blocks, and too many constituents are finding that their lifts are broken down regularly and not getting fixed. This is not just down to individual landlords, because it cuts across the piece. Would it not be time for a debate in government time about how the four main lift companies organise their structures and their maintenance contracts? Because this is actually stopping people living their lives and leaving people very often trapped in or outside their flats.
Leader.
Well, as an MP who also represents a number of tall buildings with people living in them, I completely hear what she's saying. I think this is a very important matter, which I'm sure, were she to apply for a debate, she would get a lot of attention for it.
Chair of the Backbench Committee, Bob Blackman.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the good news is that the Backbench Business Committee will be meeting on Tuesday. We are open for business, and a steady series of applications have started to be received, particularly from one of our long-term season ticket holders. As you can, we are going to be open for requests for debates for 90 minutes or a half-day debates. It will be very exceptional for us to grant a full day's debate. We are also going to keep a very close eye on those people that make applications or support applications as to whether they actually turn up and speak in those debates allocated. So that's very true. So we're looking forward, obviously. We had a very good meeting with the leader earlier this week. I'm looking forward to her announcing time for the Backbench Business Committee to allocate debates. Now, Mr. Speaker, you very graciously granted us the Diwali reception in Speaker's House on Monday. We thank you for that. And can I wish Hindu, Sikhs and Jains Shubh Deepavali for today, and Nutan Vashna Abhinandan for Saturday.
Good. Yeah. Leader.
Well, can I too welcome the formation of the Backbench Business Committee and welcome the conversations that we've begun about ensuring we work together on the allocation of time for the Backbench Business Committee and also other debates that may otherwise be granted by the government. And I'm sure that the Honourable Member for Strangford, I'm sure his application, he will definitely be here in attendance for, should you grant it. I think there's no question of that. And I'm expecting it to be on the freedom of religion or belief, maybe, as a common theme in these sessions. And can I also join him in wishing everybody a happy Diwali?
Noah Law.
Delighted that the Chancellor's budget included a significant real terms funding increase for local authorities, giving them more to invest in vital community services and infrastructure. May I also express my condolences to those victims of flooding in Spain. One of my constituents has experienced significant flooding issues, with the road outside her property being resurfaced in a way that directs water directly into her home instead of towards the river. So after raising this with Cornwall Council, she was told that nothing could be done. Does the Minister agree with me that it's incumbent on local authorities to ensure that every penny of taxpayers' money is spent as effectively as possible to address those serious issues such as flooding, like that experienced by my constituent?
Well, can I thank him for that? He raises important matters relating to his constituency, which is absolutely as he should be doing. He's right to say that the party opposite has starved local government of its funds over recent years, and this has left communities paying the price for that. And that's why I'm really proud that in yesterday's budget we saw a significant real terms increase for local government spending power over the coming years, and we will be doing multi-year funding settlements for them. And he raises a good point about flood resilience. He will know that we set up the floods task force, and there is a debate next week on these issues. He might want to raise them there.
Sir David Davison, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, this question may be of interest to you, but the Leader of the House, as well as the ministerial responsibilities, is the nearest thing this House has to a shop steward in the Cabinet. And it's in that context I ask her this question. A month ago, I wrote to the Chancellor about her cancellation of the Investment Opportunity Fund. That decision put at risk an investment of hundreds of millions of pounds in a new factory in Goole in my constituency, and with it hundreds of jobs. 2 weeks ago I chased up that letter and was told I was going to get a reply. I was even given a reference number. And then yesterday at 1300, 1 o'clock on the dot, I got a timed email telling me the Treasury was not going to answer my question and was handing it off to somebody else. This was a dishonest piece of obfuscation to avoid accountability before the budget debate. I hope it's not a harbinger of things to come, but will she remind her colleagues in Cabinet of their direct responsibility to us for our constituencies and answer and treat it properly in future?
Leader.
Well, can I also join in congratulating him? And look, he raises a really important matter, and he can be assured that I take a very dim view when my colleagues do not respond to parliamentary written questions or correspondence in both a timely and a thorough manner. I constantly and very recently have reminded all my Cabinet colleagues and ministers of their duties to do so. And if people have any such instances where that's not been the case, please, I will take those up directly if he wants to share that with me.
And in fairness, as he's brought me into the debate, I'm also concerned. I do not expect ministers not to reply to honourable members of this House, whatever side they're from. But worse than that, at the last minute, to transfer that answer to someone else is totally unacceptable. Ministers are accountable to this House, and I fully support the Leader. And I will ensure that I will work with her to make sure all members get the letters on time. Get the message back to them, and I'm sure the Treasury bench will be listening now. And I hope that the reply is being sent as we speak. Liz Twist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I recently had the privilege of visiting the newly created Right and Heritage garden, which includes a memorial to Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and of cutting the ribbon. Now, Brighton Wrighton is an amazing organisation that does so much to help our local community. And I'd like to thank particularly Terry Doherty, who led the project. So can we have a debate in government time on the importance of local community organisations in supporting our areas?
Leader.
Well, can I join her in congratulating all those who work at the Heritage Garden in her constituency, and particularly Terry Doughty, who sounds like he's done an immense job for her constituents. This is a topic that gets raised regularly. I'm sure now the Backbench Business Committee is open, they might consider an application on the involvement of local community activists and the importance of volunteering to our communities.
Chair of the PSC, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Mr Speaker, thank you. I know you take a close interest in the enormous restoration and renewal project in this House, which is estimated to cost at least £10 billion of anybody's money. At least. And we are currently spending £2 million a week on maintenance in this place, a large chunk of which is taken up by the costs of preparing for restoration and renewal. Can I put it to the Leader of the House that we really do need to get on and make some decisions on this matter, because otherwise we face some catastrophic failure of one of our services, a flood, a fire or something in this House. And we've been talking about it since 2014. It really sets a very bad example to the rest of government if we can't even manage our own affairs.
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank him for raising that? And this is a matter that the Speaker and I discuss regularly, and is something that he and I and many others across this House share concern about. He's right, this building is in desperate need of investment and restoration and renewal. He will be aware that there are the three options of how we would take that project forward coming to this House early next year, and I will play my full part in making sure that we do restore and renew this fantastic building.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My constituent Claire's son, Elliot, was diagnosed with diplegic cerebral palsy at the age of 4 and needed a wheelchair immediately. Elliot is now 8 and his chair desperately needs adjusting. But due to the waiting list for re-enablement services, Claire and Elliot have had to wait over 6 months. Can we have a debate in government time on the provision of re-enablement services?
Yeah.
Well, again, she raises a very important matter about re-enablement, care and services, and I think it's another shocking symptom of the state of care and the NHS in our country, and that's why the budget yesterday was so important in renewing our National Health Service going forward. She will be aware that the budget debate next Tuesday will be on fixing the NHS and reforming our public services, and it might be a good moment for her to raise that matter then.
Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Given the long-standing community concerns in my constituency of North Cornwall about road safety issues and the extremely high rate of fatalities on the A30 at the Plusher Junction and the need for a graded junction at that location, can we have a debate in government time on how national highways and the government can better work together to deliver critical infrastructure projects to reduce accidents and fatalities on our busy A roads?
Well, as he will, thank you for that question, and thank him for that question rather. As he will be aware, we did announce yesterday some additional funds for road and other infrastructure, which I think will play an important part. And we will also be delivering an updated strategic framework for road safety very shortly, and I will make sure that ministers come to this House regularly to report on that.
Polly Billington.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My right honourable friend will be aware of how much coastal communities like mine in East Thanet depend on bus services, not least to get to vital healthcare. So I am grateful to the Chancellor for finding the money to retain a cap on bus fares. In East Kent, however, our orthopaedic centre is Canterbury, and yet there is now no direct bus service from Ramsgate or Broadstairs, making access harder for the very people with mobility issues that need it. Can she find government time to debate access to healthcare via sustainable, reliable, safe and affordable transport?
Leader.
Well, that's an excellent question, and I'm glad she raised the issue of the bus cap. She will be aware that the Conservatives only budgeted for the bus cap to last until December, and it's this government that has extended that, albeit £3 cap, beyond December. But we are also bringing forward further bus regulation to ensure that local areas like hers and neighbouring authorities can once again take control of bus routes, bus fares and bus timetabling to meet the needs of communities like hers.
Alicia Cairns.
My heart goes out to the family of the British national killed in the flooding in Spain over the last few days. The NFU described yesterday's budget as disastrous, the CLA a betrayal, and farmers across Rutland and Stamford are in distress, as my inbox shows. Whether it be agricultural property relief or charging full road tax on double-cab pickup trucks hidden within the budget, the NFU say the DEFRA Secretary doesn't care. So can the leader advise when the next chance to raise this breach of previous promises will happen, or will she secure me a meeting for my local farmers with the Minister?
No problem. Leader, thanks.
Well, I'm sorry to hear of the reaction of her local community, but we did have to make some difficult choices in this budget, but we absolutely recognise the important role that farmers play to supporting their local communities, to providing food security and many other contributions they make in this country. And actually, I think it is worth noting for her and her constituents that 3/4 of farmers who currently entitled to receive the full relief on inheritance tax will still get it after this budget. So it's the top 25% that won't. And I'm sorry to say, but she will remember that her party really did lose the support of farmers, and that's why this party now has over 100 new MPs representing rural constituencies.
Dave Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service since 2011 has lost 437 full-time equivalent firefighters. More than that, our on-call and retained firefighters, the numbers there have dropped by over 60% to just 189 from 483. It's a very, very, very significant drop in the amount of fire cover that we have. The cuts have been 1.5 times deeper than any comparable rural fire service. Does the leader agree with me that this is a very pressing issue, and will she consider a debate on the adequacy of fire cover across the country?
Leader.
Well, I know from my own constituency, Mr. Speaker, that these matters get raised all the time. Fire cover and having adequate fire officers in place is very important to local communities. They have seen their budgets cut over recent years. I know this is a matter that the Home Affairs ministers take very seriously, and I know Home Office questions are coming up shortly, and I'm sure he would get a good response then.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Increasingly, debates in this place are punctuated and populated by references to outside bodies, from the Environment Agency to Network Rail to the Migration Advisory Committee to the much-mentioned OBR. None are elected. None are accountable to the people we serve. We don't really know who they are. So can we have a debate on the increasing blob activism, which threatens the separation of powers? We know about judicial activism, but this kind of activism is just as dangerous, because these bodies wield immense power, and ministers elected to govern should not be stymied, hampered, cowed or chastised by people with no democratic legitimacy.
Leader.
Well known as a blob activist himself. I think, look, I don't mean it that way. Against the blob is what I meant, Mr. Speaker. Sorry to be misinterpreted. But look, I think if he is referring to the important financial, you're going to start me laughing a minute now. If he's referring, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it.
Order. I think the leader needs a few moments to calm down.
Leader.
Can I thank you for that? Yeah, sorry. Perhaps that joke should have been referred to one of the prospective leaders of the... No. So we won't go any further. But I think what he's referring to actually are some very important independent financial institutions which I think offer this country the financial stability that it's renowned for around the world. And when we ignore those institutions, as his previous Prime Minister Liz Truss did, we see who pays the heaviest price for that. So I actually think they play a very important role. But he's right, they should be accountable to Parliament, and it's my expectation that these bodies do regularly appear before select committees and they take that very important role.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 5-year-olds in the most deprived areas of Luton are 2.5 times more likely to have experienced dental decay. So I pay tribute to organisations like the Dental Wellness Trust, who are doing great work to tackle children's oral health in Luton and beyond. I welcome our Labour government's plan to fix dentistry, including provision of a supervised toothbrushing programme for 3 to 5-year-olds. So would the Leader of the House provide government time for a debate on the positive impact these measures will have across the country?
Leader.
She's absolutely right to highlight the dire state that NHS dentistry fell to under the previous government, and the really high levels of poor oral health that many of our children face. And this remains one of the highest reasons for admission into A&E and other services, poor child oral health. And that's why this government is committed to tackling these issues, and there was further work announced around that by yesterday's budget. She will know that there is a debate next week on fixing the NHS, and I'm sure she'll want to raise those there.
Ellie Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this week in Colombia, the international community is meeting to discuss and drive forward nature protection. Here in the UK, we know that nature is under pressure and declining, and I believe it is a point of agreement across the entire House that agriculture has a crucial role to play in protecting nature. And yet, the budget yesterday set out a 2% real terms decrease over the next 2 years in the DEFRA budget. May we have a debate in government's time on the vital role of nature-friendly farming and the importance of government support for it? Thank you.
Leader.
Well, can I thank her for that? And I also share her concerns about nature and the wellness of our nature in this country, and we are committed to these issues. And that's why there were many plans that we brought forward in recent weeks and will do in future weeks. And there are many things in the budget yesterday that will work towards that, which I thought she may welcome as well, particularly our drive to the clean energy superpower that we want to be, and all of the benefits that will bring in the future.
Chris Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the House will remember on her visit to Shoreditch the real anger on the doorstep for my constituents about waiting times in Shoreditch and Worcestershire as a whole. Yesterday's announcement by the Chancellor will bring a real difference to those people that she spoke to who've been waiting too long for the treatment that they deserve. Will the Leader of the House give us some time to speak, to talk about how the differences announced yesterday will make a real difference to those people's lives moving forward?
Well, I know from my visit to Shoreditch with him that he campaigned brilliantly in the general election and before then on bringing change to the NHS in this country, of bringing about reducing waiting times, reducing waiting lists, and as he will have seen yesterday, thanks to his campaigning and the campaigning of many others, the single biggest boost to our NHS funding since 2010 outside COVID, and that will begin the process of rebuilding our NHS as his constituents want.
Steph Carroll.
Mr. Speaker, residents in North Norfolk are worried about the impact of flooding as we enter the winter months, and I welcome the debate, the general debate planned on November the 11th. Tomorrow I'm holding a meeting of key agencies with responsibility for water management and almost 200 of my constituents. Mr. Speaker, the Broadland Futures Initiative is likely to report out later this Parliament on the future scenarios facing this area, which I know concerns both myself and the member for Broadland and Fakenham deeply. Once it's published, will the Leader allow us debate in government time on this important report to ensure we have a safe and secure future for this treasured national park and low-lying Norfolk more broadly?
Leader.
Well, can I thank him for all the work that he does locally on flood resilience and raising these matters, and that is one of the reasons that we wanted to have the debate next week, because it is raised in this session so often. I will, of course, make sure that the relevant minister comes to this House or gives a statement to this House when that report is published.
Abtisam Mohammed.
Reforming the leasehold system is a priority for me in Parliament, because I have many leaseholders in Sheffield Central who are living in unaffordable homes as they are struggling to extend their lease, pay their monthly bills due to high, inconsistent and unfair charges. As an example, one of my leaseholders had a service charge of £1,800 a year, which was increased to £6,000 a year as a result of building safety issues, which was certainly not their fault, rendering their property unsellable. Can the Leader of the House share when the Government will bring forward secondary legislation to implement provisions of Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act so we can give leaseholders greater powers, rights and protections over their homes?
Leader.
Well, she's absolutely right to raise what I know will be a very big issue in her constituency, as it is in my own as well. The blight of leaseholders over recent years, soaring service charges, many living in unsellable, unsafe homes is absolutely sort of shocking and unacceptable, and that's why this government will both enact the previous government's Leasehold Reform Act quickly and at pace, but we will also finally bring an end to the feudal leasehold system with our forthcoming bill.
Dr. Luca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Farmers today woke up broken and devastated after the announcement yesterday by the government. You only have to look across social media to see farmers speaking about the impact it will have on generational farming because of the hike in the tax they are going to have to pay. Not only on that basis are they going to have to pay, farmers are one of the people who suffer the most from mental health, given the problems of having such a tough harvest. This is a concoction that's come together under this government's making. So I ask her to ask the DEFRA Secretary to come to make a statement on Monday. And second of all, will she write to the Health Secretary to ensure there is a ring-fenced fund for all those farmers who are going to suffer, who are unable to pass on their family farm to the next generation, because that impact on food security is going to be severe and shocking.
Well, I have to say, I mean, as I said earlier, this government is incredibly committed to our farming community, to our rural communities, to ensuring food security. We have had to make some difficult decisions in this budget, but I would gently say to the honourable gentleman, I think he should be careful about scaremongering about the actual reality of what is happening here, because, as I said earlier, three quarters of those currently entitled to the full relief will still be entitled to the full relief after the measures in this budget. And perhaps he might reflect on one of the reasons why so many rural constituencies chose Labour MPs at the last election was because the NFU, the president of the NFU, described decisions by the previous Conservative government as morally bankrupt.
Lucy Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next year, England will proudly host the Women's Rugby World Cup, with Franklin's Gardens, home of our rugby club, the mighty Premiership champions Northampton Saints, set to stage several matches, including a Red Roses game. There's huge excitement, Mr. Speaker, in our town, and I know beyond, about the opportunities that England hosting games will provide, including the opportunity to grow grassroots participation in the women's game. Might the Leader of the House consider scheduling a debate on government time on how we can ensure that we capitalise fully on this opportunity and expand both support for and participation in the women's game?
Leader of the House.
Well, she's right to raise this issue, and these kind of events really do inspire participation and interest in the women's game and more broadly, and that's why this government is committed to a curriculum review, putting PE and sport back at the heart of our curriculum as well, and initiatives like Sport England's This Girl Can campaign continue to inspire many young women and girls to get active and get involved, and I'm sure they will look at what she says closely.
Claire Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small community pharmacies have been pushed to the brink in recent years. On a visit to Abbotswood Pharmacy in my constituency, I heard how the current funding formula has led to a real terms cut of 30% since 2015, and how it punishes rather than rewards them for providing extra services. So will the Leader of the House give us a debate in government time on the role of pharmacies and how we can better support them to do their vital work?
Leader.
Well, community pharmacies, as she rightly says, play a very important part in ensuring that health services are in the community, provide preventative support for local communities as well. That's why this government is rebuilding our NHS, and community pharmacies were going to play a very important part in that. There is a debate next week on fixing the NHS, where I'm sure the Health Secretary will be keen to hear her thoughts about community pharmacies.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Sudan, we know there is 25.6 million people facing acute hunger. 10.7 million people have been displaced since last year, and the World Food Programme is saying it's a race against time to stop this famine from escalating. It's a very grave situation. So can we have a debate in government time to put a spotlight on what's happening in Sudan and about the UK's response to it?
Leader.
Well, she raises a really important matter, and I think that's why Mr. Speaker granted an urgent question on this earlier this week, because there is a lot of interest in this House, and I know it was raised with the Prime Minister yesterday at Prime Minister's question time. We continue to monitor the situation very closely, but I will, as I always do, ensure that the Foreign Office Minister and Secretary of State do come to this House regularly to update us on these matters.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday, along with the Honourable Member for Grimsby and Cleethorpes and council leaders, I met with National Highways, specifically to raise the issue of the A180, but also access to the major ports of Immingham and Grimsby. Irrespective of the amount of resources that National Highways have, surely the input from local representatives is important. Could we have a debate on how National Highways prioritise their various spending programmes?
Leader.
Well, he raises a good point about the A180 in his constituency, and he'll be aware that in yesterday's budget there was significant increase in investment in our roads announced in that budget, and there are also significant growth deals and devolution plans there as well to ensure that local people are delivering for the local transport needs of their area. But I'm sure that in transport questions or in the budget debates forthcoming, he could raise these issues.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for letting me speak.
Well, Jenny, thank you very much. It's your job, but I appreciate it. Two weeks ago, at my MP surgery, I met with medically retired Chief Fire Officer Rod Wainwright. Rod Wainwright was one of the first attenders at the terrible tragedy of Grenfell 7 years ago. Subsequently, he's been medical retired because of PTSD. He didn't get the support that he asked for from the fire service. The in-house counselling wasn't enough, and has subsequently had issues with his pension. Rod blames himself for not being able to save more people on that terrible evening. Would the Leader of the House agree with me that it's people like us in this room with suits on who are to blame for the terrible tragedy of Grenfell, and not heroes like Rod Wainwright, and agree with me that further debate needs to be had to support heroes like Rod moving forward?
Well, can I thank him for that very powerful question and contribution there, and I'm really sorry to hear about the suffering that his constituent Rod Wainwright continues to suffer, having been in attendance at the Grenfell Tower tragedy. The Prime Minister's made clear that he still feels that survivors and bereaved of the fire have been let down badly before, during and after, and that includes those who attended as fire officers and others. And there will be a debate, another debate on the Grenfell inquiry reports in due course, and I'll make sure that he's aware of that when that happens.
Testament.
In August, the Ministry of Justice informed Bristol Crown Court that it would have to close courtrooms and save over 400 sitting days before March 2025. Last week, the difficult decision was made to remove 40 trials listed between now and the end of March. All the witnesses and defendants have been told their trials will take place. Most have been waiting over a year, in some cases 2, and many of those 40 are rape and serious sexual offences cases where the accused is on bail. They won't be relisted until at least October 2025. Could we have a debate so that the victims of rape and sexual abuse can understand why justice is so dreadfully delayed and how this government will tackle the court backlog?
Leader.
Well, she raises a really important point, and she will know that this government is absolutely committed to ensuring that there really is justice for women and girls who are subject to rape and violence, and this is really quite a scar on our society that it still takes so long. And she'll know that the court backlogs that she describes is another part of the legacy that this government is trying to deal with, along with the prisons crisis and others in our criminal justice sector. We do have justice questions next week, and I'm sure that the Secretary of State will be pleased to answer her questions then.
Lee Pitcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last weekend, I had the privilege of attending the Pride of Rosington Awards, where I met many talented and really quite amazing constituents who give back to their community every single day by the bucket load. I was thrilled to learn that 5 remarkable athletes from Andy Critterton's Martial Arts Centre in Rosington, Heidi, Jo, Millie, Ella and Millie Lee, will be competing in the WKC World Championships this week. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating all the entries and winners of the Pride of Rosington Awards, and in wishing our athletes from Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme the very best of luck in the World Championships?
Leader.
Well, can I join him in congratulating these remarkable athletes and all of those who took part in the Pride of Rosington Awards ceremony in his constituency, and I will be delighted in wishing the very best to his 5 constituents who are taking part in the WKC World Championships.
Mims Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we've heard today, Mr. Speaker, the concerns around family business and other honourable members this morning have talked about working farming businesses. Could the leader use her good offices to put forward the priorities of family businesses? The assault, indeed, of the budget of broken promises has left many of my constituents very concerned who have family businesses. These two are working people and they are worried about their rights and their future. Could she consider giving time to discussing these wide-ranging needs of family businesses, given the interest the government has in granting general debates?
Leader.
Well, she'll be aware we do have many debates on the budget coming up, starting, continuing today and going through to next week. But if she's asking about farming businesses, which I think she is tangentially, and the inheritance tax changes, I'll just repeat what I said to her colleagues earlier, that this government is committed to our farming communities, is committed to food security and our rural communities, and that's why 3/4 of those who currently receive the full relief will still get it after these changes, and we are bringing about many other things that the farming community will help, including a settlement that will provide £5 billion over 2 years for farming and land management, which will help restore stability in the sector.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by wishing my wife, and although celebrating today, a happy Diwali? In Blackpool, we were promised a £300 million regeneration project, the biggest regeneration scheme in over a century. But unfortunately, we've heard over the last few days and weeks that this isn't going to happen. It's vital that schemes like this happen in Blackpool, and many businesses and individuals have come to me since asking for a state-of-the-art stadium arena similar to the Honourable Member's Co-op Arena in Manchester Central. So will she allow a debate in government time to how the government can support local seaside towns like mine with private business get the infrastructure they desperately need?
Leader.
Well, I'm sorry to hear of the decision in his constituency, but he will know that many of the commitments made by the previous government to support projects like the one in his constituency, unfortunately, were commitments of fiction because there was no money allocated to them whatsoever. But this government takes supporting our communities incredibly seriously. That's why we've boosted local government funding, and it's also why we are continuing our drive to devolution.
Jim Allister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Windsor Framework Retail Movement Scheme Plant and Animal Health Amendment regulations have been laid. These regulations impose EU obligations not just in Northern Ireland but on the whole United Kingdom. Could we have a debate in this House in government time on the backdoor creep of EU regulations? The unelected House has already debated this matter. Shouldn't the elected House do so?
Leader.
Well, we have debated these matters at length over many, many years. I will look into the statutory instrument that he refers, but as he knows, we are keen where there are controversial statutory instruments that they actually do come to the floor of the House for greater scrutiny.
Irene Campbell.
Will the Leader of the House take time to debate the awful situation regarding the SNP ferry fiasco that impacts on the towns of Ardrossan and Brodick and the wider area in my constituency of North Ayrshire and Arran? The Ardrossan to Brodick ferry route has been in place for around 190 years. Due to SNP mismanagement and lack of robust negotiation, this vital route is now in jeopardy. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating the Save Ardrossan Harbour Group, who are fighting hard to save this crucial local service? And the ferry situation in Scotland is extremely serious, and I think it's about time it was brought to the House. Thank you.
Well, I will certainly congratulate her constituents on the work they're doing to save this local service. She's absolutely right. The Scottish Nationalist Party government of Scotland has overseen huge mismanagement when it comes to these long-awaited ferry services. They're late, they're over budget, and they just add to the £5 billion worth of taxpayers' money that Scottish government has wasted on pet projects.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Further to the earlier questions from our friend for Rutland and Stamford and Bosworth and Hinckley, yesterday's budget was a full-frontal financial attack on our farmers. As the Leader has declined a statement, we have 4 more days of debate on the budget. That's 8 opportunities for the DEFRA Secretary or the Farming Minister to open or close one of those days so that MPs on both sides of the House can fully hold the government to account on their plans for farming. Will she ensure that the DEFRA Secretary or Farming Minister open or close one of those days?
Well, as he knows, he can raise any matter relating to the budget in any of those debates, and they will be responded to by a Cabinet Minister in the course of those debates. But I do take issue, as I took issue with those of his colleagues, for the characterisation that he sets out. You know, we are committed to farming communities and to supporting them. We've got a settlement that provides £5 billion over 2 years for farming. We are prioritised the Farm Recovery Fund, and I'm afraid this does stand in stark contrast to what the party opposite did for farmers with their botched Brexit deals, the phasing out of farming payments, etc. And it's no wonder that Labour won so many rural constituencies at the last election, and we'll continue to support those constituencies going forward.
James Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I visited Cockgrave Community Garden in my constituency several times, and it is doing a fantastic job addressing food insecurity, promoting nutrition, education and enhancing mental well-being in our community. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that it's important that this House considers how organisations like this are put on a secure financial footing to support the long-term sustainability of community-led initiatives?
Leader.
Well, can I join him in congratulating the work of Cockgrave Community Gardens in his constituency as well. And as gets raised in these sessions, and as it has done today many times, the vital role that community volunteers play in making our communities great places to live and work and raise a family is absolutely vital. And the chair of the Backbench Business Committee is still in his place. And as I said earlier, I think these would make a very good backbench debate.
John Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm aghast to hear that it's scaremongering to talk about the damage that's being done to agriculture. I can tell you that in Dumfries and Galloway, the howls of concern are real. We really need to discuss this. Britain cannot live by air-freighted Mange 2 alone. This budget imperils food safety in this country, food security in this country, and we must have action on that. It's incredible that the DEFRA Secretary seems so uncaring on this. Can we have, as my honourable friend has raised, can we have him here in the House in this budget debate, please?
Leader. Well, he will be here shortly for questions in a couple of weeks' time, and he does come to this House regularly. And I have to say, I find some of the questions this morning, they are scaremongering when we make very clear that 3/4 of farming businesses that currently are entitled to the full relief will still get it after this budget. We're talking about the top 25% here, and it's not a cliff edge in any case. We are fully committed to farmers, the farming community and food security in this country, and I certainly don't buy imported Mange 2 as he may himself do occasionally. But that's why the settlement that was announced yesterday provides £5 billion over 2 years for farming and land management, and it's why we've prioritised the farming recovery fund as well.
Kirsten Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Recently, we welcomed Restart a Heart Day to raise awareness of life-saving skills. That same week, 5 boys from my constituency, including 2 from Blackburn United Community Sports Club, discovered someone in an emergency situation, put them in the recovery position, called an ambulance and retrieved a defibrillator. Would the Leader of the House join me in congratulating the boys for their swift actions and clear thinking, and will she allocate government time to debate vital first aid training in local communities?
Well, can I also pay tribute to these boys as well, who rush towards danger rather than turn away in this moment that they were faced with. She raises a really important point about first aid training and the now extensive use of defibrillators and how life-saving they really are.
John Milne.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to draw the House's attention to the neglected issue of water neutrality, which is often confused with nutrient neutrality, but which requires different solutions. For the last 2 years in my constituency of Horsham, the local planning authority has been faced with the impossible task of obeying 2 entirely contradictory laws. One says we have to build over 900 houses a year. The other says we can't build anything at all because of water neutrality. This bizarre legal standoff causes enormous difficulties. Will the Minister find time to debate the issue of water neutrality so we can find a fair and rational solution for my community?
Yeah. Well, he raises a very important point, and I'm sure these issues will be debated in this House in forthcoming weeks, and they are matters that we are considering in our forthcoming planning and infrastructure bill. And as he knows as well, there are some forthcoming pieces of water regulation as well where he may want to raise that.
Marcus Campbell-Savers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In 2019, the Keswick Flood Action Group set out how Thirlmere Reservoir could be managed to greatly reduce the impact of major flooding, like that seen in the town during Storm Desmond. Would the Minister make time to debate specifically how water companies' infrastructure could be better used to prevent flooding in constituencies like Penrith and Solway and many others?
Leader.
Well, he raises an important matter for his constituency, and that's one of the reasons that we were pleased to announce today the flood preparedness debate next week, where I'm sure he'll want to raise these matters. And it's also why the DEFRA Secretary has been taking swift action on water reform to ensure that our water companies are playing their part.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Conservative Party undercut farmers when they signed the UK-Australia trade deal, allowing for imports that use practices banned in the UK. The Environment Secretary promised that he would stop farmers and the UK's environmental and welfare standards being sold out. Therefore, will the Leader of the House bring her colleagues together to set out how they intend to review the Australia Free Trade Agreement, and if a debate in government time can be secured on this matter?
Well, there seem to be a number of issues being raised this morning for the DEFRA Secretary, and I shall certainly make sure that he is aware of all of them, including this important point that he makes today. He rightly points out that the farming community and farmers in this country were really let down by the previous government, both with the botched Brexit deal and other matters as he describes. And this government is working at pace to ensure that we can really put food security and the future of our farmers right back on the front foot.
Mark Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently met with some business leaders at the excellent White Rose Business Park in my constituency. Now, they told me one of their key priorities was recruiting well-trained, well-skilled, well-educated staff as they expand their operations, and we welcome that expansion. Will my right honourable friend, the Leader of the House, make time for a debate in government time in this place on the need to work with councils, mayors, and crucially those businesses to deliver stronger, upskilled workforces?
Leader.
Well, can I also congratulate the excellent work of the White Rose Business Park in his constituency. This government is going to ensure that we have the skilled workforce of the future. We have a range of issues that we are pursuing, setting up Skills England, as announced in yesterday's budget, more money for further education, which is vitally needed as well, reform of the apprenticeship levy, and as he describes, absolutely devolving these areas to our local councils and mayors to ensure that local skills provision is there for all.
James Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Mexico, Father Marcelo Perez, a priest and a prominent figure in the Mexican state of Chiapas, who was killed while travelling to his parish. Father Marcelo was deeply respected for his lifelong dedication to advocating for peace, for justice and indigenous rights in a region heavily impacted by organised crime and violence. His loss has deeply shaken his community and underscored, I believe, the dangers faced by those challenging violence and defending human dignity in Mexico. So will the Leader of the House join me in condemning such violations of freedom of religion or belief, and will the Right Honourable Lady ask the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office to raise this issue with its counterparts in Mexico? Thank you so much.
Leader.
Well, as he does every single week in these sessions, and I shall miss him next week when we're not here for business questions, he raises yet another important issue, this time in Mexico, in relation to freedom of religion or belief. And he really is a doughty campaigner on these matters. And I look forward to him also being a regular attender, raising many similar issues in the backbench business debates that we'll be having shortly.
Andy McNay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Businesses and commuters in my constituency of Rosendale and Darwin are daily hampered by seemingly never-ending disruptive roadworks. It isn't just an annoyance, it's actively holding back growth within the constituency, with major employers actively considering relocation. Yesterday I attended an excellent Westminster Hall debate on this subject and was pleased to see a strong degree of cross-party consensus on the issue, both on the need for action and the sort of changes needed. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that now is the time to properly address poorly planned and overrunning roadworks and provide time for further debate if needed?
Well, as ever, he raises a very topical matter that I know frustrates many of our constituents and us alike when these works are seemingly endless and never seem to be coordinated with one another. This government yesterday in its budget did provide a huge boost to road maintenance budgets, which I hope will help, but also we are consulting on proposals to raise penalties and even apply charges when these works overrun.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would the Leader join me in congratulating Councillor Ish Mistry and everyone involved in the wonderful Diwali celebration in the streets of Rugby on Sunday? Our diverse community is strengthened by the Council's Community Warden Service, who do much enforcement and referral work and partner with our police and our Rugby First bid ranges. Would the leader consider a debate in government time about the role of this ecosystem that sits beneath policing and criminal justice in the public consciousness, but is vital?
Well, can I also join him in congratulating all those involved in the Diwali celebrations in Rugby recently. He's absolutely right to talk about the vital role of neighbourhood policing, and that's why we've got a neighbourhood policing guarantee which we are taking forward, because it's absolutely vital that people can feel safe in their local communities.
Richard.
Deputy Speaker, last week I had the privilege of visiting Wales Primary School in my constituency and meeting with the Year 6 class there, who are making sure that their school is an eco-school, and they're doing a number of initiatives around their community, such as litter picking and recycling, and they told me off for not recycling sufficiently enough, and I've taken steps to make up for that. Will the Leader of the House join me in praising the Year 6 students at Wales Primary School? And would there be time in the House to debate how we can encourage sustainability across our education sector?
Well, I think we can all agree as members of Parliament there's no better occasion than a good telling off by a Year 6 class. So I join him in that. And he's absolutely right. We do have COP29 starting in Baku very soon. And I know the Climate Secretary will be coming to this House to update on the progress of that COP29 as soon as he can.
Sam Rushworth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Tuesday the 19th of November is International Men's Day, which celebrates the contributions made by men, as well as issues affecting men's health and well-being and gender equality. And this is an issue that's important to men and boys in my constituency. Will the Leader of the House make time available in government time to debate issues affecting boys and men?
Well, I think International Men's Day is an important day for us all to celebrate the contribution of men in society. I mean, might not be quite as much as the contribution of women. No, I'm joking, but a very important contribution that men make, but particularly, as he rightly highlights, some of the issues around mental health, and suicide is still the biggest killer of men in this country, and it's something that we should all be very conscious of. I actually think this would be an excellent backbench business debate. We were discussing these kinds of debates only yesterday, so I would encourage him to put in an application.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week I had the pleasure of receiving letters from Sycamore class of Slough Church of England Junior Infant School. Inspired by Marcus Sedgwick's novel Floodland, the students expressed their concerns about climate change with remarkable insight and passion. The children's genuine concern and thoughtful suggestions highlighted the urgency of addressing climate change. It was inspiring to see young minds so engaged and determined to make a difference. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating Slough Church of England Junior and Infant School on their excellent work? And furthermore, will she encourage schools across the country to educate pupils about climate change and the actions needed to address it?
Well, it sounds like the Honourable Gentleman also got a good going over by some pupils in his constituency. A good education for him there, I'm sure. But I will definitely join him in congratulating Slaithwaite Junior and Infant School on their work. And climate change, education and action really does inspire the next generation, and we'll continue to support it.
The chamber's filling up nicely for the last contribution. Lee Barron.
Thanks very much. Proud to be the last man standing. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the 3rd of June 2024, the Environment Agency granted a permit for the Corby incineration plant, despite there being no public consultation since its original permit was modified. We now know that incinerators are widely regarded as the dirtiest forms of waste disposal. Would the Leader of the House agree with me that it is time for a debate to review the conditions under which these licences are issued and amended, especially in residential areas?
Leader.
Well, again, I think these matters of incinerators in local constituencies do come up often in these sessions, and I think a debate would be well attended were he to apply for one. But he is right to point out that operators of incinerators must use the best available technology to minimise emissions and meet strict emission limits. And where this is not happening, he absolutely should be raising that with the government.
Well, that's the end of business questions. I allow the front bench a few moments to swap over.